Hi, Brenda.
Hey, this is looking really good.
Well, thank you. We're just finishing up here.
Great. Well, this is Assistant Professor Matthew Kirkwood. He's an Assistant Professor of Landscape Architecture here at OSU, and he and his class have been installing a brick walkway to go with our service learning project, or our children's education garden. And Matthew, this is really looking good.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I bet our viewers would like to know kind of the process that goes into installing a walkway like this.
Well, sure. First, let me introduce you. This is what's called a plate compactor, a flat bed plate compactor. This actually levels the brick. We like to think that we had a nice level brick walk to begin with, but this has really helped us level it out at this point and get it nice and stable.
So basically this is the final step.
This is the final step that really makes this nice and smooth.
Okay.
Without this step, it would look a little rough here, so we need this final step to finish it off.
Now I notice there's a lot of sand down here too.
Right. Again, what we're doing here is we're putting the sand in between these joints, and this plate compactor actually vibrates that sand down. It also vibrates the sand from down beneath up through the brick, so it gets a nice tight fit and holds this brick into place.
Well, we're kind of here on the back end of it. Maybe we should back up and kind of go through the steps of how to install this. And where do you actually start installing a walk like this?
Well, okay, the first thing we did was we marked out where this brick walk goes. And we knew that we wanted a straight walk from starting there at the arbor and ending down there at the other walk. So once we had that down there, we wanted to determine how wide is this. This walk itself is 3.5 feet wide, which is fairly comfortable for two people walking side by side. So that helped us determine the size of that. Once we marked it, what we did is we excavated the soil beneath this. And the soil, we had to determine how thick all this was going to be. The brick itself is 2.5 inches. The sand beneath that is about an inch and a quarter. Then beneath that is we have a gravel, and that gravel is about 4 to 6 inches. This is a pedestrian walk, and that we can get away with 4 to 6 inches of gravel, which makes it nice and level and supports it fairly well.
Okay, so you basically add all those up, and that's how thick you need to excavate.
Right, and that totals up to be about 7.5 inches. So we excavated 7.5 inches down. Now, the reason we did that is because there's sometimes like this grass here is actually a little higher than the walk over here. But on the other side, for example, the soil is actually a little beneath that. So we kind of had to average it out. And that's what kind of determined the level of this. We wanted to keep it fairly level. We didn't want to go up and down because it's a nice straight walk at this point.
Now, once you've excavated, what's your next step?
Once we excavate here, it's nice to get it nice and level. Then we put the gravel, 4 to 6 inches of gravel. And once we put that gravel into place, we use the plate compactor like we just saw me using. That was used in an earlier phase. And that gets the gravel nice and smooth.
Okay, now, the gravel, what type of gravel do you put in for something like that?
Okay, for this is, again, a walkway here, which is not going to have too many vehicles on top of it. So we use like 1.5 inches gravel down to fines. And that's what you ask if you wanted to go to any kind of gravel place. You just say, I want 1.5 inches limestone down to fines. You need that fines basically to tie it all together. If we're all the same size aggregate, like pea gravel, for example, it does not compact. So you need all those, the 1.5 inches down to the fines.
They kind of lock together that way.
Locks into place. So once we compact that, then we're ready to put the sand on.
Now, how thick of a layer of sand do you put in?
We put 1 inch of sand on there. Now, that's kind of interesting how we do this, is because on top of the gravel, we basically lay a piece of PVC pipe, very similar to this broom size. What we do is we pile sand on top of that. Then we take a board on top of that, and we screed it nice and smooth. That way we get a nice, level, plane surface that we can start putting the brick on.
Okay, so that's how you get the whole thing level before you start.
Right. That really helps us out.
Now, after you've got the sand, then it's time to start laying the brick, right?
Start laying the brick. And in this case here, we've done what's called a herringbone pattern. This is called the field. This is the center part from here to here. And this is laid, and again, the herringbone pattern. And this is what's called a soldier course. It's bordered on both sides by a soldier course, on this side and that side. In addition to that, we had to cut bricks. You know, we try to minimize our cutting of bricks, so what we ended up doing is we cut a brick in half, and that goes in here. So half goes here, half goes there, so there's no waste at that point.
Now, how do you keep all of this straight as you're laying the brick?
Well, that's a good question. Well, for the most part, we kept it fairly straight, and by doing that, we put a post in one end and a post in another and tied a string. And we try to keep this joint fairly consistent along that string. So we went from the center out at that point.
Now, once you've got it all in there, how do you keep it from moving?
From side to side. Yeah, well, it's kind of tricky here. What we do, we put the sand here. We sweep the sand in here, which gets a nice tight fit. We need to do this again. Then we border this with an edging. And the edging over here is kind of hidden already, which we want to keep that hidden. That
Right.
edging keeps the brick nice and tight.
Okay.
And that about every 18 inches we put a spike in, which secures that. And we
Okay.
backfill that with soil. And once the soil's there, that keeps that fairly rigid. It doesn't allow that brick to go out
Okay.
beyond that point.
So, now this is, again, a herringbone pattern, but there are several ways to lay brick, aren't there?
Oh yes, this is just a herringbone, which we consider this the strongest pattern here for a walk. The reason is because you have joints here that are broken with another brick here.
Right.
So that keeps it nice and stable. It does not want to move one way or the other. Now there are other patterns we could have used, but this, again, we wanted to do the herringbone. A little more complex, but it minimizes cutting and looks kind of nice.
Now can we look at some of the other types of patterns?
Sure, we've laid out 3 other patterns here that we could have done as well. We have here, let me kind of start with what we have. This again is our herringbone pattern. Again, I was talking about the strength, and that strength relies on each of these bricks kind of working together as a unit. So if one kind of pushes this way, you can see that it's pushing this and this one and this one. It's actually pushing several of them,
Right.
not just one at a time. And that's why we call that the stronger pattern. And in addition to that, I can show you another pattern here. This is what's called a basket weave pattern. Now this looks nice. What we use is 2 bricks horizontally and 2 bricks vertically. But again, if we were to shift this, you can see they really move. And that's why we like to use the herringbone pattern. This over here is what's called a running bond. Most people are familiar with this on a house. This basically just uses bricks laid side by side like that. It does tie it all together this way, but again, not this way. It shifts that way. And since we're doing a walk here, when there's going to be a lot of people walking back and forth, we like the stability of this. To counteract the basket weave pattern here, this is what's called a modified basket weave. We basically use a horizontal one here, 2 verticals, and a horizontal. And that pattern just repeats this way. So again, we're tying more of this together.
Right.
Rather than just the 2 bricks, now we're involving 3 bricks. In fact, if we had another layer here, we'd actually involve several more. So this is a little stronger pattern, but again, there's several different ways we can do it. And that's what we chose to do at this point, was the herringbone pattern.
Well, the finished result here, Matthew, is absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And we appreciate all the work that you put in on this.
Well, it was fun, it was hard work, and unfortunately a day like this, it's a little hot, but it was worth it. Thanks.
Another component of our children's garden was to have a potting bench for the kids so that they can kind of interact out here in the garden. And Matthew, you put this bench together, and it's a nice, simple design. Maybe you can tell us how it went together.
Sure, yeah, actually my students built this. I can't take credit for that. What we did is I quickly designed it for them. We wanted to have something that was fairly easy to construct, yet durable and serve the purpose of a potting bench. So this is what we ended up with.
This is great. Now, it's really pretty basic. What are the supplies that you have in this?
Okay, we have a 4x6 here. That's a post here. We have it on both ends, a 4x6. Then this is bordered here, what's called by a 2x8. The 2x8 running both this way and this way. What we ended up doing then is putting some supports in here.
Right.
And in addition to those supports then, we routed out this 2x6, which receives this piece of metal. This is called expanded metal. And it's kind of interesting how this works. The reason it's good that this is rusting, because the way they fabricate this is in the shop, they'll fabricate this and they'll put a lot of oil on it. And it's very difficult for paint to adhere to that without the rust. So actually when we want it to rust, now at this point we're ready to paint it. So following through that, once we get the metal on here, we ended up putting these little clips in here. These basically called U-nails at this point. Then we've secured this end with some lag bolts, 2 lag bolts per post. And then in addition to that, we have a washer, a nut, and that ties it all together. And this is galvanized, so it's not going to rust.
Oh, great.
But then again, we're ready to have paint on here. And what we're going to do at this point here is we're going to excavate 2 holes here and go ahead and set this in place. Because this will be for children's 5th grade students, we want to make sure what height they would want. What might be comfortable for us here at 42 inches, we're going to have now to step it down to 36 inches. And that's why we've made the posts enough to accommodate that for 32-inch mounting height.
Well, I like the metal here because you can pot on it and all of your stuff falls through to
the soil goes through it. Unfortunately, their shoes will get dirty, but yes, the soil should go right through there. And that should be pretty nice. That way they also can water their plants at this point. Again, that water can seep through without ponding on the table.
It's basically a lot like a greenhouse bench.
Very similar, very similar. And this should be sturdy enough to support the pots they would have, and an occasional kid or two, because this is, you know, fairly rigid. This is 2 feet, then the whole dimension here is 8 feet. So it's 2 feet by 8 feet, which should accommodate, you know, several children around there.
Great. Well, this will be a nice addition, and we'll have to show everybody after we get it painted and set in the ground.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.